Hello, everybody. Welcome to another DMV Comic Book Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Freddy, and today I'm joined by my friends Travelle and Damon. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Glad to have you back. Damon was with us on episode 1, and then I joined him on episode 2 on his podcast. So, Damon, do you want to introduce yourself and your podcast a little bit?
Yes. Also, hi. I'm Damon. Don't have a lot of good lighting over here, so my bad. But
You're good.
I'm the host of Super Saturdays, a comic book media podcast where we judge books by its impact and visuals. And just see if it stands the test of time. Each episode, I'm joined by a different guest, and I'm glad to be back, Freddie. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. And yeah, everybody go check out Super Saturdays. There's always good conversation going on over there and great video editing, I must say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, and I'd also like to introduce Travelle again. He's joining us from episodes, I want to say 5 and uh, 8, 9, and
It was
now
eight.
10, right?
No, 10. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
hello. I'm Travelle. I go by Big Boy Nerd on Threads. Usually, I'm mostly active on Threads these days, but Threads, Twitter, Instagram. But I'm starting a podcast myself soon. I should be starting. Well, actually, I'm starting this week, and I should have the first
Cool.
episode out by the end of the month. Yeah. It's going to be called Big Boy Nerd's Introduction into Afrofuturism, in which I'm going to be investigating different aspects of Afrofuturism and trying to understand how to think about it as practice and how to think about it as an everyday walk of life. Just thinking about your future a little bit differently, planning for the future, thinking about the path in a way to actually consider how your present and your future informs your past and vice versa. So that's the aim of the podcast. So I should be starting that soon.
Awesome. We are excited for
Mm-hmm.
you, and we're excited for your podcast to come out soon. So everybody check that out as well once it goes live. I'm sure we will be sharing it, posting it on
Yeah,
Threads. And
nice.
do you know already where it's going to be available?
I'm going to put it up on all podcasting platforms. So it's going to be up on Spotify and where you can, like Apple Podcasts. But I'm also going to just do a video component on it on YouTube. So I'm going to have like
Awesome. Sounds
the
good.
actual podcast on YouTube.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's what's
Yeah.
up.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you guys again for being here. I'm very excited to have you because we are discussing the season finale of season 1 of X-Men 97. Tolerance is Extinction Part 3. Man, we are here. It's been a wild season. I just want to get right into it. I don't even want to like give a summary or anything. I just want to know what are your guys' feelings right now, having finished the first season? Damon, you can start.
That was epic. Like, it was
Mm.
dope. It was a fun ride. It was a really fun ride. I liked it a lot. The episode, I watched it last night around midnight. And should I have been up that late? No. But you know what? Hey. Um
Yeah, we've all
and
been
I was
talking
watching
about how like we watch at the most inconvenient times, but we're still like 100% tuned in.
Yep.
exactly. I'm up here screaming and whatnot, waking up my partner, and I'm like, oh wait, I forgot it's late. So I can't be doing all that. But
Mhm.
no, I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was a fun ride. I felt like the last couple of episodes, for once I started noticing how short these episodes were, whereas previously it didn't feel too short. But these last
Mm.
couple of episodes, I was just like, dang, I wish it was longer.
I mean, I
Yeah.
will note that this episode was the longest episode of the season. I think it came in at
Really?
about 45 minutes, I want to say.
Yeah, it did feel a
Um,
little bit longer. Yeah, it did feel a little bit longer.
No, it felt shorter to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
you're just having
Because
too
it's
much
just
of a
so
good
good.
time, you know?
Yeah,
It's just so
probably.
damn good. Yeah, it's so damn good. There's so
What
many
about you,
things to love
Travelle?
about
Yeah.
it. I actually think it's Marvel's best offering since Endgame. I really
Hmm.
think that there's really not much step into that. I mean, I think that like it as a cohesive like story, just the first season, it's tight. I think that everything that is being done with the characters to kind of move the plot forward is succinct. It's tightly written. I think that there's a lot of great one-liners. I think that the writing is so succinct that they understand the characters so well that it's like it's hard not to like root for the characters, but it's also hard not to like tap into your own nostalgia when watching the show. I think that they really did a really amazing. I think that they actually, well, Bo DeMeo and his staff, I think they created like magic because there's a balance of all these things, and they're also infusing all of these different storylines from comic books into this whole season, which is approximately 30 minutes long per episode. And I just think that they actually created magic. I think it was really incredible.
Agreed, man. Like you said,
Agreed.
everything has been on point from the writing to the animation to the
Mm-hmm.
music. I have a bit of news to share about that. The Newton brothers who composed the show, they said that the soundtrack is releasing on May 24th. So I think that's next
Ooh.
week.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's
And
excellent. That's good gym music
yeah,
right there, man. Yeah.
absolutely. Like this soundtrack has been banging from start to finish. Like you got the original theme song. Like that's what we all wanted. Like every time an X-Men movie
Right.
came out, we were like, are they gonna play like the original animated theme song? No, they didn't. But
That
but
was a missed
then
opportunity in all honesty. Like them not doing
mm-hmm.
that in those movies.
But then by the time Ms. Marvel came out and we got that little X-Men tease, they played it because
They
MCU
did.
owned Disney at
Yeah.
that point,
Yeah, they
or
did.
Disney owned
Well,
Marvel at that point. So
I think that that's because that's where we were as a culture. Like we were at a time that everything was they well for one, comic books were on the low. They were kind of on the rise again. We were having issues with just even selling comics. So by the time the first X-Men movie came out in 2000, they were trying to do something drastically different to get the non-comic book readers in. So if they were to do all these like make it super comic booky or like reference the 90s show, which is super comic booky, you might alienate a certain fan base that didn't watch the original show. But if you put the name X-Men in the marquee, the people from the original that watched the original show and new people that may think that it'd be cool to see what this new guy Hugh Jackman may do, uh, that might actually make people interested to go to see the movie. And I think that that was the decision making. And then I think Grant Morrison made the same sort of decisions around that when it came to his new X-Men run. And it was like that whole they wanted to make them sexy and not comic booky because people tend to think comic books are for kids. And I think that's
I,
what happened, unfortunately.
I do want to say I do like the theme, the X-Men movie theme. I think it came out in X2, not in
Oh
X1,
yeah,
but
it's
like John
beautiful.
Yes.
Ottman, like dun 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 dun
It was
dun
classic.
Oh
dun
yeah,
like
Yeah.
it's I love it,
they
dog. I
brought that
love it.
back a few times, especially
It-
when
Hmm.
Bryan Singer came back. Although I hate to mention him, but
Hmm.
it is what it is.
Days of
You
Future
know,
Past. When it came
but
on in Days of Future Past, it was like
mhm.
it felt like I was home almost.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know.
me
Right?
too. Me too.
Yeah.
That's where. Yeah, that's where. But no,
Yeah,
I
that
read
movie
somewhere
brought it
that
back for real.
apparently Singer didn't want to be like he didn't want to reference the '90s show. I read somewhere because he
Really?
actually thought it was too childlike. He thought it was too childlike, which is very ironic coming from him
But he watched
messing
the
with
I
entire
kids because
show.
he was
he
messing with
watched the
kids in the
show. Yeah,
first
like
place.
Yeah.
I've heard mixed things because, like you said, he did watch the show like before, like he based some of his movie decisions off of the show. But I also
Yeah.
heard he was very like, he
No
didn't want
He
it to
didn't
be
comments.
want any comic books
cartoony.
on set.
And he
He didn't
didn't
want
want
any
comic
comic
books,
books on set.
so he had like some
Yeah,
weird ways about him for sure, to say the
right.
least. But
Because I
I
remember
mean, to say the
when
least.
he got the job I remember when he was offered the movie or whatever, I could have sworn it was that he didn't really know about the X-Men. So then he got all the
Right.
VHS tapes and watched the entire series. And then that's what got him interested after watching the series. And then I remember he chose the lineup of the characters to kind of semi mirror the show because he was like, okay, people know the X-Men, but like I'm gonna just use these characters because it's easy. Uh so
Right.
that's really trippy to me. Like you liked the show but chose not to, but you know what? Hey, whatever.
I mean, it was
I
the
mean,
2000s. Everybody was trying to be
right,
edgy, not just
dude.
him.
True.
Like
Eddie,
every
you got to
we had
think
the
they.
Matrix, we had
Thank
X-Men,
you.
we had what
That's
else
what
did
I'm
we have?
saying. Like
Everything. Ultimate Comics,
things were
like
like, yeah, everybody because the Matrix was the sexiest thing out at that time. So why not mimic that with like leather? Put them in leather. Put
mm-hmm.
them in something that's sleek, not something that's bright and loud and no, like subdue them, make them look cool. Put them in leather jackets. That was the
So that's
whole
why
movement
it's
around Grant Morrison.
Like that's why it's so interesting now that we're on the flip side of that. Like we get the joke in last
Hmm.
episode about what you expect, black leather, calling back the movie, and
I love that. Yeah, I love
now we're
that.
embracing colorful costumes because that's what we've been
Hmm.
waiting for, and the animation is best suited for those bright colors. Like this show has been like we talked about the color palette before on previous
Yeah,
episodes, so it's
yeah, it's
great.
beautiful. I think that there's like so many little decisions that they make around the color palettes, around like things making things pop, like just like the space being like super purple at certain points,
Hmm.
and like that reflecting against like Wolverine's outfit. I think that like them putting them in space and changing their outfits, that's also a color palette decision around what will pop better when it comes to them looking with a more of a darker background. So like when it comes to character designs like Storm or even Wolverine's outfit, the brown, it looks better on that splash with background in their original bright colors with Storm's white color and Wolverine's orange and yellow and blue. It looks better with their more subdued colors. It complements the color primary wheel a little bit better when it
Hmm.
comes to those color dimensions. And I think that those decisions that they make around all of that, and also writing it into the narrative to like the X mansion gets blown up, so they have to go put their other old clothes on. They incorporate all these changes into the storyline. That's what I
Yeah.
mean about like them doing magic, like actually understanding what direction they're going, planning
Hmm.
for it, and actually building around that. I just think that they did such a great job.
All right, so I have three questions for you guys. Um,
Hmm.
let's do it one at a time. Okay, so first question is, what was your favorite moment of this season finale episode? I'm sure there were plenty of great moments to choose from, so it might be a hard choice, but just pick one, and if someone else takes yours, then you can feel free to piggyback on that, or if you just want to pick a different one, that's fine too. But I'll go first to give you guys some time to think about it.
Hmm.
I will say that from jump, like when the episode started and they were playing Turn, Turn, Turn by the Birds, I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, okay, I know this song. And then they're at the bar, it's Magneto and it's Professor X, and it looks like it's a flashback, but then you find out it's not a flashback, it's a memory, and
It's so
they're
good.
in Magneto's mind right
Hmm.
there. And not only all this is happening, but at the same time, we're getting the scene from the past where Professor X basically comes out to Magneto that he's a mutant, and then Magneto comes out too, like
Yeah,
I'm a mutant too.
right.
Like the mutant metaphor is heavy. And it's
Heavy,
like I was
heavy.
like, what? This is unbelievable. Like I didn't expect to see
Word.
this level of just characterization for them, and that song Turn 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 is like the most hippy dippy 60s song you can think
Yeah,
of,
it
but like
is.
it was perfect. I kind of liked
But
it, and
that is the point,
and
I
I gotta
think.
Yep.
say,
I loved it.
and shout out to Rick, who was on previous episodes with us. He couldn't be here tonight, but he did send in a message that was also his favorite scene of the episode when that happened at the beginning. So what
Mhm.
about you guys? Who wants to go next?
Um, Going off of what you just said, piggybacking off of that, when that happened, I had to like pause the episode and laugh just a little bit because it was gonna like I was thinking about Twitter because I'm on Twitter a lot for this shit for my podcast and
Right.
everything. So I have been seeing a lot of like Black Twitter, but Black X-Men Twitter making jokes about a lot of different things. And my favorite
Hmm.
joke that they talk about is how the X-Men is basically two gay lovers who fell out and they're having a messy divorce.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
They
watching
make
that scene,
their divorce everybody's problem.
That's the
yes.
problem, right?
So
Right.
watching that scene where like
Just, I
Magneto and
mean,
Xavier came out was like, oh, okay, all right, my feelings are fire.
mhm.
Hmm.
Right. I don't think it's that far fetched. I mean, I actually am of the camp to think that it's cool for them to just be friends. Like, it's good to show that they can be platonic friends. Like, it's good to have that representation on television or whatever. But also,
Hmm.
if they were lovers, I would be totally fine with that. That to me makes sense too. I think that makes a lot of
True.
sense. I think that there's a lot that aligns with that. I think that how sensitive they are to one another and how close they are, and they're, I think that it wouldn't be too far fetched of a stretch for them to be like, oh yeah, they had a thing for a while, whatever. Like, who
Hmm.
cares? Like,
Like
I think it might make their relationship more layered, to tell you the truth.
It would add a lot more
listen.
I
depth
mean,
to it.
Like while we're on the
mhm.
topic, like later on in the episode, Professor X is literally like cradling Magneto. He's like, I'm here for you. Like, I will never
Yeah,
leave your
word. He was like,
side.
I got
They
you.
were
I'm
like,
not gonna leave you type shit. Yeah, I saw
they were
that.
like giving
Underwater.
vows
Yeah,
to each other. It was like marriage vows, and then
yeah,
like they
they
were like
were
Mhm.
really in it.
and
That
he was
was
helping
some
Magneto
stuff, man.
self-actualize, and then he was like,
Yes, he
Magneto
was.
lives. Like,
Yeah. I
I
actually
mean,
love that scene. That was a great
yeah,
scene.
That
it
But
was
was
it
all
really
was it
cool.
great.
was very he did climax. I must that is very true. He did climax. He
He
did. He
did.
did. He
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 did.
sure
did.
He
did.
did. He absolutely did. Like it was like a thing.
And
Like I was like,
Magneto did
"Oh, okay,
live.
bro.
Magneto lived.
Yeah, he lived, bro. He definitely
And then when they were
lived."
blasting,
Yo, it's
like when Xavier was
crazy.
blasting his mind, they were going hard. Like the whole room was spinning.
Yeah, they
Like
were.
the light
Yeah,
was
they.
flashing.
Whoa. Yeah.
Like, okay, I do have to say though, like I have to ask the question: are Magneto and Professor X as overexposed as we say Wolverine has been? Because like even in the movies, like those three characters are like the main ones over and over and over, and like and that's for a reason because like they're great characters. Like we are like really engaged with everything that goes on every time they're on the screen. But it's like, but is it too much though? Is it are they stealing too much of the focus, or is it enough, or is it okay? What do you
No,
guys think?
I think that
I
that
don't
I
think they're
think that
overexposed at all. I feel like no, go
no,
ahead.
no, you got it, you got it.
Yeah, I don't think they're overexposed at all. Like I it's funny because I think Professor X and Magneto are the two characters where they can't necessarily be too like I don't know how to best describe when it's Wolverine, get off my screen. You're doing too much. But when it's Professor X and Magneto, it's like this is captivating. This is great. But I think it's primarily because if Professor X is like taking front and center, the X-Men has to as well. Like they move as a unit almost. I don't know how to best describe it, but like it's not like I kind of don't get tired of it per se.
Mm-hmm.
Live action movies I kind of did, but like in other properties, I don't think I got like that tired of it as I could have been. So I don't know.
What about you, Travelle?
Mm. I don't think that they were taking up too much time at all. I think that it's crucial to use them as conduits to talk about just specific ideological clashes. I think that like when you have the rest of the team, that's about relationships and what that looks like and how they progress as a relationship, like a connected community of folks. When you see the interplay between like someone like a Cyclops and a Wolverine or a Wolverine and Jean, and that's all relationships. And then we get into territory around like emotional accountability, relationship, issues around those things. But I think that when it comes to Magneto and Charles, I think that it's usually a matter about like ideological clashes. But I think now what makes this telling of them so much more captivating is because it's not just that anymore. It's also about their relationship and the ways
Mm-hmm.
in which like they build relationship and ways in which boundaries have been crossed and how to like repair those things in real time and hold each other accountable and how do you deal with the changes in this person that you cared about at a point in time in their life. How do you reconcile that? And that's what their relationship is now. It's not just like, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, we are just like we have this relationship and we just care about these two different things and we have to talk it out. It's not just that anymore. It's more so like, oh yeah, like, yo, like we actually love each other and our ideological clashes are actually pulling us apart or we're clashing because of it. How do we make sense of that? How do we like move forward? How do we come to some resolution? And I think that's what the goal is with the two of them in this telling, as opposed to being like, let's just fight each other. Like I think, and I think that because of that, I think that being the overarching thing, it's sort of, I think that relationship between the two of them serves as like the heart and soul of
No,
the X-Men
yeah,
and their clash.
yeah, I agree though. Actually, like their two perspectives are like the central conflict of the X-Men. Like they define the
Mm-hmm.
mutant metaphor. Like they're both
Right.
richly written characters. Where like and their whole conflict is like essential to what X-Men is. Like I don't think we would have X-Men if not for Xavier. Unfortunately, like love him or hate him. I think we got give him credit for making the X-Men what they are. Like he kind of brings Magneto around to his way of thinking this episode. He's like, you know what? Like we may not look alike, but we are still family, and we have family is worth fighting for, whoever your family is. And the X-Men are a family. And at this point, Magneto acknowledged that he was part of the X-Men too, because he just led them for a whole season. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
fight for my family today. I'm gonna save the Earth. And I'm gonna fuck up some Sentinels while I'm at it. But you know,
I think
you
I
know,
think Professor X gave him an avenue to heal and validated him in that. I think that's really what helped, because usually for a long time it was just like, because it's an ideological clash, there's a component of his emotionality, of like what he went through as a person. Magneto, I'm speaking about, that Magneto went through as a person that needed to be validated. Like, he went through traumatic experiences over and over again, and the world continuously hunts him. So him being told like, "Oh, the way you see the world isn't valid," just didn't work for him. But Charles finally got to a place to be like, "Yo, I see what you went through. I'm sorry that happened to you. That really was bad. So let's try to figure out a way to heal and move forward together." That
yeah.
changes the whole narrative between the two of them, as opposed to being, "You're bad. You have a different way of looking at the world and it's wrong." Like, that's how Charles usually does stuff with him. He didn't do that this time around, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
why Magneto came around. That's how I read it.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to shout out the moment last episode, I think, where Xavier did like affirm Magneto's point of view. He was like, he was talking to the president. He was like, Magneto
Mm-hmm.
is just a man who has suffered the worst that the world has had to offer. Like, he acknowledged
Precisely
that
right.
even then, before all this happened. So it's like, I think, like, and they go way back. Like, that's what this episode showed. Like, they go way back to, I don't even know what year that's supposed to be, or I guess the 60s, because of that song choice. But
Yeah,
um
'60s, right? hmm
but yeah,
Which
it
is
was
the
Which makes
dawn
me
of the
wonder how
X-Men. That's
old
right.
is Professor X and Xavier? I mean, not, yeah, Professor X and Magneto. How old are they in this show?
well,
I
Professor
would
X,
say,
and I was going
yeah.
back to the One Man's Worth episode today, and in that episode he's in college, and it was 1959.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
They're in their
maybe
'50s.
let's just assume he was 20 back then, you know.
hmm
So
Okay.
so in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, so he's got to be at least like
'90s.
six,
He's in his
60,
'50s.
70.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know about
Okay.
50.
60,
50s.
70, but I think he's like in his 50s. They're probably like their 50s. Around
Okay.
there,
Okay.
right there. That part, yeah, probably around there. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Who
And that's why, I
knows?
mean,
But they're
like, that's
cartoons,
why,
but like, yeah.
yeah. But that's why I think it's important that, the song that they chose in the beginning of the episode was that song, because that song is like really like a very emblematic of the civil rights movement, of the moment in time in which they were protesting wars and hippies,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very emblematic of that generation, of that time.
And
So,
I
and,
want to
and that's
point
when the
out,
X-Men were created. The X-Men were
and I
created at
want to
that
point out
time.
that
Sorry.
the lyrics of the song are from the Bible,
Mhm.
basically. Like, I think it's Ecclesiastes, like, to everything there's a season, a time for
Mhm.
weeping, a time for rejoicing, a time for everything under the sun. So like, and this show has a lot to say about the theme of time, about time
Yep.
travel, about trying to
Yep.
change things, um, about the arc of time. There's that famous quote by Dr. King, like, the arc of justice is long. The arc of time is long, but it bends towards justice, I think is what he says. Um, you know, uh, it remains to be seen, but
Mhm.
I think it's interesting stuff. Any other thoughts about this
Mhm.
Magneto? I want to say the metaphor of like the waves crashing in from outside the bar. That was really interesting. What did you guys think of that?
Yeah,
I think
I
it
I
was done
thought
really
that
well.
was cool. Yeah, I thought that was
Yeah.
done really well too,
Yeah,
actually.
like I really felt like the turbulence of like Magneto's
Mhm.
mind, like, and like, and man, it was really well done.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I agree. But I'm gonna say about my position on Magneto. I think Magneto has become a specific favorite for me this time around. He's become one of my favorites. We've talked about this before, about how, about like my position on Magneto, and how like the whole debate is, if is he or is he not based on Malcolm X. And I'm very adamant about that. I always say that he is. I say that there is, yeah, he's influenced. The character has been influenced by Malcolm X. Not to say that he was based off of Malcolm X, because there's always debate around that. People say that, oh no, he was based off of this, this Jewish leader from a different time. Like, and that's completely valid. However, I think what is invalid is like people always trying to say that he's not based off of Malcolm X. I think that if the character was written in a time in which Malcolm X was very, very active, he was written in a time during the civil rights movement. That character, and then as time went on, the people that actually passed hands and wrote that character were influenced by a world that was changed by Malcolm X's work. So, in some way, shape, or form, they're influenced by what Malcolm X has said, done, how he's changed the world in some way. So, when you start creating a character and writing a character as time goes on, there's going to be some residue, some backlash, something that you pick up from life, from time going on, that represents that character, represents that person, Malcolm X. So I think that even if he's like not directly connected to Malcolm X, he is a part of the history and lineage of how Malcolm X has been portrayed in society, and he parallels that on purpose. And I think that there is a lot to be said about that. And I think the push for a lot of people, white people in particular, white comic book nerds, to gatekeep that is racist, because I just think that it's just like y'all can't accept that maybe a black man has influenced the narrative control, the narrative creation of this character as time has gone on. So that's just my soapbox rant about Magneto, because I love that character. I think he's great, but I just think that's important to talk about that elements.
Absolutely, like I agree with you. Like,
yeah. No, go ahead, Freddie.
You're the guest, so you can go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Travelle, you put it in the best terms like ever in regards to that. Like, you hit nail right on the head with that. Yeah, people do argue, like, was he based off of it? I wouldn't necessarily say he was based off of it solely. Like, at first, I would not give Stan Lee all that credit. Which I have some thoughts about Stan Lee, but that's a other conversation. But
yeah,
no, I would say a lot of the influence where he was possibly like his character was then written with the intentions of adding that little like spice on Max. I'd argue, and don't quote me on this because I'm still reading little bits and pieces of the Claremont era. I'd argue a lot of that came from Chris Claremont, like doing that. And then I'm even thinking about God Loves Man Kills, Magneto's like stance on all of that as well too in that book. Like I don't know. All I gotta say is some of the X-Men fans really bother me when it comes down to marginalized communities talking about things in regards with the X-Men, and just I don't know, but literally you hit the nail on the head with everything you were saying.
Yes, and I agree with you as well, because us black fans, we have always seen the civil rights metaphors ingrained into what's going on in the X-Men. We've seen the Malcolm X parallels. We've seen the Martin Luther King parallels. We've seen that's what we relate to. Like, that's what's present in our country. Like, it's pretty obvious, but like you said, people like to gatekeep it, and they like to be racist about. Like, we've seen a lot of racist backlash to X-Men every time they reach new heights of popularity. But I do want to shout out two things, because like just this week I started watching. There's this show on Disney Plus called Genius, and this season they're doing a Malcolm
I wanted
X.
To see that.
They're doing a Malcolm X MLK dual season where they're both the focus. And I watched the first episode over the weekend. It was good. Like, I learned a couple things I didn't know. Like, and I know Black history. I know about them. Like, I've obviously seen the old Denzel Washington movie. Like, that was so good. But the point is that like there was a scene that in the first episode where we see Malcolm X's past, where his father is killed by white people. I mean, it's kind of like a train thing, but also, and then, but the white people attacked his family, and then they come for his mom, put her in an institution. They call her insane, and and me and my partner, we were having a conversation about that, because it was like black people, we get institutionalized, we get criminalized for things that are done to us. Like, we're not
to us,
like just because someone has like experienced trauma and might have post-traumatic stress symptoms, like that's not recognized as like human, like that's so treated as like it was just really hard to like watch, because you just know it's just going to be rough, because it was rough then, it's rough now, but it's worth watching, and I think I want to recommend that to people, just to refamiliarize with the history. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the second
definitely.
thing I wanted to mention, yeah, like Chris Claremont did say he was more specifically inspired by the Israeli prime ministers,
Hmm.
David Ben Gurion and Menachem Begin. But like, I think that like that's a whole another interesting slice of history that is relevant today and relevant to
Indeed, right.
the world and
Mm-hmm.
these characters. But even beyond that, Giancarlo Esposito was just like confirmed to be hired by Marvel, and he's been outspoken
Right.
about wanting to play Professor
No,
X. So it'll be very
yeah.
interesting to see if they decide to give us a black Professor X and a black Magneto this time around. I don't know.
I'm
I'm
not.
just these are
I
rumors.
Man.
wouldn't like it. Surprisingly, I wouldn't like it
Go
for a
ahead.
couple of reasons.
Go ahead.
Um, I
Okay.
wouldn't like
I would like
Professor
to
X
hear this.
being. I wouldn't like Professor X being black, especially now. I'm not an X-Men expert. However, I love the X-Men, and I'm, you know, getting myself trained up on a lot of different things. But Professor X can be arrogant. He also can be kind of manipulative, and some of the ways and things that he operates in regards to fighting for peace amongst mutants, it doesn't come from the place of him being a black person. It doesn't
Absolutely.
There you
feel
go.
like
Professor X
he
has a
like
lot of white privilege. Like for every for
yeah.
like
Yeah.
like like he is he I always see him as an intersectional figure because he's a mutant, he's disabled, but he's also a white cisgender male who who's rich. Like he comes from wealth and privilege. So like he's a mix of all these things. Like and that's why uh it's kind of a interesting character with faults and with also I guess he might have a few virtues as well, but
Mhm. That's
go
Mhm.
interesting.
ahead.
I was going to
Magneto
simply
being
say,
black.
yeah, go ahead, continue. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Magneto being black, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I do have like I don't even know. I just lost the words as to my thoughts on it. But like I wouldn't be opposed to it fully. I'd have to like figure out which angle are you going to be going from with that.
Yeah, they have to like
Mhm.
be intentional and be. They need black people in the room if they're going to do something like that. They need in the writers' room. But go ahead, Travelle. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah, well, for one, Freddie, I absolutely agree with you. You need black people in the room. That's why X-Men 97 was so good, is because you had a black queer man steering, leading the charge around that story. And that's why it was so good. Let's keep it a buck. That's truly why it was so good. But also beyond that, I do think that I happen to agree. Not, I don't think I would want Professor X to be a black man, because I think Professor X represents a certain particular point in time in which we talked about like nonviolence and respectability politics, and he represents
Hmm.
more of a Martin Luther King esque figure. That as time has gone on, like his particular approach, we've as Black people have learned all of the different inequities of that, and all of the different issues around that, and all the different ways in which that caters to more of a white gaze. So I think that making him a black character, it would kind of still kind of feed into that sort of same narrative that black people need to just be more docile and friendly.
Hmm.
However, if you cast a black man as Magneto, ah, that changes the whole narrative. That angry black man narrative, very important. However, let's keep it a buck. I think honestly, before they do any of that and make those decisions, they need to cast these characters as Jewish people,
I was
straight up
going
and
to say
down, like
that.
Jewish
Thank you for
people.
saying that
Just
because
just like
Magneto,
you must do it. Yeah.
there's never been a Jewish
No.
actor who portrayed
Right.
Magneto, and so
Who
I think
portrays
Jewish people
Magneto? Right.
deserve
That's crazy.
representation
Deserve
of
that.
like
That's this is
this
their
is
medium. This is
this is
right. This
a
is their
character who
medium.
survived the Holocaust. Like that's
Hmm.
This
intrinsic
is
to
what I'm
his
saying to
character.
you.
So it's like
Right. Right. That's
I
why.
think it would be kind of a controversial move to say the least if they do race bend the characters. Like I mean, race bending is always like a controversial thing for a variety of reasons, but um,
I
sometimes it's not
mean,
a big deal. Sometimes it might be a big deal. I don't know.
it's not a bit. It's not. I mean, honestly, we've actually seen and shown that it's not a big deal, because if you race bend quote unquote race bend and you have white writers at the helm, it's the same issues that still prevail. Same issues happen. Same racist bullshit happens. You get a token black person, a magical Negro. You get all these
Yep.
different tropes that caricatures of black people that white people just write into the script because they don't have any idea unless you're here's the thing because everything's racist unless you're like actively being anti like racist and working on those things you won't see it like you could fall into that trap like you could just fall into that trap. So like I said, I actually think that if you're going to tell that story and make Magneto a black man or making Professor X a black man, they both have to be black people. However, I don't think that they like both Professor X and Magneto has to be black. They both have to be black. If you want to tell that story that way, this is what I think. However, I think if you want to tell it like and still try to keep that same weight and gravity that we can connect to in some way, make both the characters Jewish. Like make them both Jewish. Like make both Professor X and Magneto Jewish. Make them Jewish. Like or you can even make Professor X white. That's fine. But definitely make Magneto Jewish. Like cast a Jewish person. Like like for real. Like I think that's important and actually make that a part of his story. Like don't forsake that. I think that we kind of like dress down how horrible the Holocaust is and how much of an effect it still has on American culture and the American people. We dress it down. And I think that movies and stuff like that tend to do that. And that's why I think that this has been so powerful with Magneto's telling now. And I think the first X-Men movie did a good job with it too when it came to Ian McKellen being Magneto. The first movie did a good job of like capturing him being a part of a concentration camp.
Yeah, I think they were one of the first to do that. Like there wasn't a lot of X-Men history prior to that was explicit about his Holocaust, his origins of surviving the Holocaust. I think it was like right after that they released a miniseries that dove into that in the comics, Magneto Testament, I believe.
I heard a lot of good things about that too. I know the art in it is like pretty good too.
Yeah, so like you gotta give them some credit for at least trying, but like Ian McKellen is a great actor, brought a lot of dramatic heft to the role, but like we said, there hasn't been a Jewish actor portraying him, and someone could say it's a bit exploitative if we're just mining this sensitive history and just for profit. So I say the same thing all the time about black things. Like I'm like, y'all just doing black exploitation here.
It's like comic books are Jewish. It's like comic books in its core and its heart of hearts is Jewish. Then we can't deny that. It's just like I just think that's what it is. When it comes to American, telling stories in pictorial form isn't just Jewish. You know, like because comic books have it's a continuum. Comic books is a spectrum. It's not just like comic books we read. Like you could read comic books on the wall, like papyrus. Comic books is like a whole medium. But when it comes to American-made comic books, the way we establish it, that's Jewish Americans. Like that's why it's a big deal that Superman right now, old boy that's going to be Superman is Jewish. That's what's a big deal. He's going to be, old boy that's being casted as Superman in the movie, him being casted and being Jewish is a big deal. That's why that's a big deal because like the character itself is a metaphor for being Jewish, a Jewish immigrant. So it makes sense that, you know, like these characters get casted as people that represent that experience in some way, even if their ancestors were the ones that represented that experience. It should be. I think that that's only right. That's me.
I do want to call out. There was a comment I saw on Threads today. Shout out to the comic historian. I hope you don't mind me sharing a bit of what you said, but I want to amplify it because this person is a Jewish person. They're a comic book historian, advocate for Jewish representation. So they said that as a whole, X-Men 97 was great, but this show fails to understand Jewish trauma, history, and experience. And they go on to talk about how, given the amount of explicit Holocaust comparisons and an outright flash of Jews, this show it is despicable. It couldn't come right out and say it. Like they remembered Magneto was from Germany, but somehow they didn't remember he was from Nuremberg. And also, they thought it rushed through far too many stories. And so, I want to just like amplify what actual Jewish people are saying about this, and also just remind everybody, none of us are a monolith. Like we don't all speak for each other, but at the same time, we do want to listen to the people who this represents because they should have some say about that. And so I think that's worth everyone just kind of reflecting on. Like I kind of feel I feel like when I see Black stories that are about our trauma, I'm always asking the same question: like, is it exploitative, or is it meaningful, or is it like, like what's the purpose here? Like, what is the agenda, so to speak? Like, who's writing it as well? Who's telling these stories? So,
Mhm. I think that is a fair, like, um a fair critique. I think that's completely fair. That like that
Agreed.
character should have like Magneto should have a little bit more space around that, and they should just like not dance around it and say like this is what it was. It was like straight. I mean, like because the average like us comic book readers know that, but like if someone that like doesn't read comics, and that's watching the show, like someone that's like, oh, let's like put on X-Men 97 because it's got so much hype, but you never read a comic book in your life, and you only know the movies to some degree, and you see Magneto, and they're trying to tell the story with all the weight that it deserves, and it just kind of falls flat because they don't just straight directly say that it's because of Nazi Germany that these things happen to this poor man. What it is dances around like saying it with your chest that you want to, like, you do not believe in these things. They kind of like I can understand that. I think that's fair, especially nowadays.
yeah.
What's going on with everything with the war right now? You like need to say this with your chest. It like it can't not be said. You have to say it. So I understand that. I do get it.
It
Did you
makes
Unfortunately,
me
want to say
I
something,
wonder.
Damon?
understand that.
Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder. Because the show itself is very it's more of an adult show. It's more adult than the original show. They're allowed to curse. We also had like it was a little bit more graphic with like blood and violence, and I think
So
even
many
down
things,
to
yeah. Like they're
yeah, and
drinking
then even
beer.
down to
They're
yeah,
all kinds
and
of
then there's
things
like
that.
hints at sexuality and so that type of stuff, like
Hmm.
sex stuff. And that makes me wonder. Well, if you guys are able to do that, if the show is a lot more adult, I'd argue maybe the show was maybe. I don't even think the show was TV 14. Is it? I don't know what the rating is for the show,
I
but
don't know.
I can pull that up real quick. But go
yeah.
ahead.
Um, because like, is it one of those things where it's like you guys couldn't go that deep? Was it
It is
censored?
TV 14.
So if it's TV
Mm.
14, they should have been able to just flat out say it, or at least show some type of imagery with that, opposed to just dancing around it. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that yeah, like you were saying, that is fair.
I feel similarly about the queerness of this show.
Yeah,
We were speaking about, we've been speaking about Magneto and Professor X, um but they're just one of many characters on this show who are queer coded, but not explicitly queer. And that's the way it's been in the comics forever. And I mean, it is what it is. But we can give the show credit for introducing Morph. Morph is non binary, Morph is they, them. They have been pretty deliberate about, including this character
I love that.
and being more
hmm
explicit about who, like, honestly, I almost teared
Morph
up
was
this
my favorite
episode.
though.
I almost teared up when Morph was like, I Gene can't say this right now, Wolverine, but I can. And then then Morph shapeshifted into Gene and said, "I love you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like that was kind of a powerful moment because I think a lot of queer people
See,
can relate to like an unrequited love, for someone who's presumably straight in their lives. I mean, it's a universal
I
thing,
didn't
but
I think
connect the dots like that. I just thought it was Morph being funny.
oh no, I
I
thought that
thought
was
Morph was
100%.
actually trying to see, but Bo just actually confirmed that it was that he was actually coming out to Logan and telling Logan
He
that he
did
felt about
actually.
how he felt about it. And he just confirmed it on Twitter. Yeah. I
Hmm.
I
didn't
love
see it that
that
way either.
actually.
I love it too. I love it too. I
And on
didn't see
top
it
of that,
either,
it
but
was
my wife was
follow up.
like, my wife saw it.
Yeah, they it was
Mm.
also a follow up on Morph's plot from the Inferno episode where like the nightmare
Right.
was Wolverine being like, "We know your secret," blah blah blah. And like they were hinting at it. So like they finally came back
Oh.
around to that and was like, "Yeah, Morph does have feelings for Wolverine, and Morph is finally able to express it, even though they have to do it in a way that is like pretending to be someone else. Like it's kind of heartbreaking."
I love that. That's
That
actually really
actually is
sad and very deep.
I I was going to say I think that that was by design also because Morph not being able to say it as themselves. I think that that was by design because it was 97. This is 97. I think that because the world wasn't as progressive as it is now, that we can have these sort of discussions. In '97, those things had to happen the way it did, and I think he had to like they had to like form into something that looks like it's resembling a heterosexual relationship. I think that was their best bet to say what they needed to say to Wolverine. So I think I think that was by design. I think that if that's the case, the argument might be able to be made around the same thing around Magneto, around why they didn't explicitly say it, because in the '90s, it was sort of by design that they just like didn't touch on certain things. But in the same case, as you just said, this is a little bit more of a mature telling. So you could actually get away with that. But how close do you want to kind of stick the landing to it to being closer to the '90s? Because you
Yeah,
know they can't say it the same way nowadays as they had to say it in the '90s.
yeah. Like to finish my point about the queer representation on the show, like I do feel like I do want to give them credit for more, but like when it comes to the other characters, it's very much all metaphorical and queer coding, like whether it's Professor X and Magneto, or whether it's Jean and Aurora, or whether it's like uh or even Scott and Logan, or anybody really. Like we have a whole queer plot line with Roberto and him coming out to his mother. It was like very much the queer metaphor there, but
Yeah, it was definitely.
Roberto is not a queer
Mhm.
character necessarily, and neither is Jubilee. Although a lot of people who read the comics will be like, "Yeah, Roberto and Jubilee are neither of them are like 100%
Both
straight."
queer. Right,
but
right, right, right.
but I think as an X-Men fan, you get used to it, but it is a little disappointing that it's 2024 and they can't be more explicit. But we take what we can get, and it's like, and to give the comics credit, in the past few years, we've had a lot more X-Men be more openly queer. We've had Psylocke
Hmm.
and Rachel. We've had Richter and Shatterstar, and like just so many more. But even though they're kind of in the background, but you know what I'm saying? Like it just progress is slow. It
What do
sucks,
y'all
but
think
it is
of
what it
like
is.
what they were doing with Kuroka, the Kuroka story with them possibly being a throuple? What was your thoughts on that? Like, do y'all think that was like actually like progress, or it was just like it was just lip service? Like, I actually thought I loved it, especially I'm in an open marriage myself, so there's a lot of it that I think that about that was like very important in regards to representation around them being able to all three of them, Cyclops, Jean, and Wolverine being able to work out their shit and try to
Hmm.
like make it work. I think that like I actually really love that, but they I think that there's a lot of potential with that story, but they just kind of grazed right over it and kept it moving with the story, and they didn't even dive into like how that even came to be. What was your thoughts on that? I mean, like I don't know, I don't know what y'all thought about that little
Damon,
dynamic.
do you have a quick
From what
take
I
on that?
saw, a little bit from because because of
Hmm.
the Krakoa era stuff, I read like little bits and pieces and everything and things that I just saw. But
Hmm.
um, from what I saw, it was more like subtext, and I would have preferred if it was just outward about it. Like I get it, not everything
Right.
has to be outward. Especially when it comes down to like media literacy and you being able to put two and two together on things. So not everything has to be in your face. However, I feel like something like that, I think it needed to be more like vocalized.
Hmm.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Like, was there moments where it was heavily like implied outside of the diagram? Like, was it talked
Yeah,
about?
Hmm.
there were a couple moments here and there. Like I've read everything Krakoa. Like there was
Hmm. There
Jean
were
and
moments.
Logan in a hot tub several times, or you got Scott and Logan without Jean in the room, just talking about they
Right.
were on
Talking about her,
Scott's
I thought,
moon talking about her, but
yeah.
also Logan said he would like to see Scott in a speedo. Like it was like there were hints,
Yeah, yeah, they were like
but
little hints. Yeah, he did say that. Then
um,
and like there's always these hints that Wolverine might be queer, like Wolverine's queer, and I think that
I
makes
could
sense
see
that he's
that.
queer. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
yeah,
On
like
top
this
of it,
show,
this guy is
I
old. He's been
honestly,
around for like hundreds of years. You
Right.
mean to tell
Why
me
would
that you
tell
like
me?
haven't done
Yeah,
that?
right.
like
Done that, or
honestly, I
you
have hope for
right?
Morph and Wolverine. I feel like actually
Me
they
too.
might could get together because
Hmm.
Wolverine turned down Jean's advances in episode 4 or whatever 5.
I
So
love that. I actually between us, like I actually think Wolverine might be the unsung hero of this season. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. And I think that because everyone can't stand him, everyone's tired of him. he played the background, but it was in it. But I think that it was a lot more effective than it seems.
No,
I think that
I don't think
yeah.
I don't think people hate Wolverine. I mean, obviously he's a popular
I
character,
think
but
people are
I
just
mean,
off of like they're tired of seeing him. I think.
yeah, like I mean,
Mhm.
he has been like first and foremost in a lot of X-Men
Yeah.
media, and
Mhm.
like people do get
For over
tired of
20
him.
years.
Yeah, for 20
Yeah, so
years,
like
right? For
I
20
get it,
years.
but I do think there's still a lot of love for him in the fandom from the people I talk to,
Hmm.
from the podcasts I listen to. Like, I think I mean, honestly, I think it's the same as to me. It's the same as Magneto and Xavier because like they're all beloved characters, but at the same time, we do want to see more of the C list and D list and Z list
Hmm.
characters. Like what are they up
Hmm.
to?
Right. I
But
mean, yeah.
I never got to hear your guys' favorite scenes of the episode. So,
Oh,
Damon,
right.
I'll ask you first. What was your favorite scene of this episode?
This is a little biased because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. That's my guy. I love the 90s show, but I loved the cameos with all the different Marvel characters, like from the
Yeah,
other shows, and even some characters we didn't see before. But especially the scene where we saw Peter Parker, Mary Jane, and Flash Thompson walk up to that
Hmm.
TV as like the news broadcast is on. And I was
Hmm.
like,
yes,
hells yes. And I have strong hope that like we're gonna probably get Spider-Man 98. I
Yeah, I
get a
think we're gonna
feeling.
get
I get a
Spider-Man.
strong feeling.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get
Yeah, I think we're gonna
Spider-Man.
get Spider-Man
well,
98. And honestly, I feel like the best way to do it would probably be actually it's really smart that 97 and then 98. Come on. Great. Great timing. Great shit.
yeah.
It's great. That's all I gotta say.
I mean, I
Honestly,
have
like
said before, I think
yeah.
that if they do that, they need to hop on production real quick because we got the other Spider-Man
Hmm.
show already coming out next year. And
Yep.
like I feel like the easier way to do it would just to incorporate Spider-Man more into the plot of X-Men going in future seasons. But I mean, look at this scene. Like, I was shocked to see Mary Jane there. Like,
Yeah.
because at the
Well,
end of
yeah.
Spider-Man, we know she was missing. So, like, when does this take place? Is she back?
Hmm.
Like, was like it
Hmm.
raised so many questions.
Right. There's like,
I
well,
know
that's what I
John
mean. Like,
Semper,
yeah, said he's
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
yeah, John
Yeah,
Semper
he said he
Jr.
was
has,
down.
and also Christopher Daniel Barnes. They have both
Yeah, they
said
both
they
said
would
it
be interested
down.
to come back. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would be there for sure. I would watch it. I'm just, I just feel like it would take a long time. Like we've seen,
I don't know.
it took like 3 years for this show to come out, and then and like we've seen like this later this year, Agatha All Along is coming out. There was a big marketing push about that this week, and that was in development right after the success of WandaVision. So look at how many years it took for that to come out. I think I also like three, was it 3 or 4 years? When did WandaVision come out? 2020 or 2021?
2020
Mm,
was when it came out.
Right.
Dang.
So like
no, I thought it
four
was
years.
2021.
It, I,
No,
I
it's
think it was
2020.
word.
I
I was
think it
in
was
college still.
2021 because I wasn't it like a
Whoa.
dry spell of Marvel stuff for like 1 year during COVID.
I could
I
have
don't
sworn it's
know.
2020. I don't
All
know.
right, I'm gonna look it up real quick, guys. We're gonna get the
No
answer.
doubt, no doubt. I love
But
seeing Daredevil, man.
it was
Love seeing
Yeah.
Daredevil.
2020. No, 2021, January
Oh,
2021. So it
okay.
was like the
That's what I
beginning of the
thought.
year.
January, beginning of the year, right?
But
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes. I get there's a bunch that's hard to choose from, but one of my favorite scenes, honestly, is when Cyclops walks up to Wolverine and says, like, don't you die on her. Don't disappoint her. Go and disappoint her and die." He's just
yeah,
like,
I was
you like
surprised by that
I
scene.
love that scene so much. That was
Yeah, it
actually
Hmm.
was.
one of my favorite scenes of the whole shit. And being just like walking up to him and being like, don't you die on her. Like that. I just love that. Like that was like up there for me. And Cyclops and Jean talking to their son, it was up there for me, and just telling him
Ooh.
that was just so good. Like I
Yeah,
was like really really pleased with that.
yeah. On
That
the
was an
topic of
amazing
that
scene.
of that Cyclops and Logan scene, yeah, like I really was excited to see him say that, and like, and it kind of speaks to the polyamory you were talking about earlier in the sense that like he does care about Logan, and he wants
Yep.
Logan to live. Like, and he might phrase it in a way that he's more concerned about Jean and her feelings, but he's concerned enough to say this to him
Right.
directly while he's
Mhm.
sitting there in a coma. So,
I
yeah, it was.
like love that. Yeah, I think that was like really, really, really well done. And I because it showed the complexity of their relationship and like how, yeah, I just really thought that was like really good, really, really
They've
good
come a
writing.
long
And
way from
you know,
from Wolverine punched him in the gut over Morph way back when.
there there is another scene that actually really got me. There one I got to mention this. There's a scene in which like Storm gets when Bastion is talking to Storm and he like and this is when they're all being held up by the Sentinels
Mhm.
and they're like taught he's like had going through his like evil monologue around stuff, but she said something I thought was quite like captivating, and she said something about how like every life it should have the opportunity to live to like be a being because it didn't choose to exist. And I thought
Yeah.
that that was so powerful. I thought that was so important and powerful for her to say that, especially
Mm-hmm.
for her to say that, for Storm to say that, for this black
Mm-hmm.
woman to say that, black woman to say that,
Mhm.
that to have this
Mm-hmm.
particular position on these things about life and being connected to the living things. I
Yeah.
think that that
Like,
was just so powerful.
I do believe that Storm is um one of the X-Men who values life the most, like who generally is against killing. Like Wolverine don't mind killing. Professor X, he'll do what he has to do when it comes to it, but and he'll do some dirty deeds. But Storm,
Mhm.
I mean, she can get low. She'll cut a bitch if they mess up. But she but
Yeah.
but she had that whole arc in
She,
the comics about like not wanting to become a killer. She's like, am I like there were moments where she was brought to it, like she had to do it in self defense or whatever. So it's like, like she struggles with that, but like in general, like so many times she has chosen to go the high road and like save lives and like and value life and I think that's important. Like there's a lot in this episode that spoke to that. Um like not just her, but all the X-Men, Beast and Cyclops and
yeah.
everybody was giving these
Yeah.
speeches. And like I have seen people online be like, "Well, y'all just shut up and like and just punch this fool in the face." But on the other side of it, like I think it was important for this show in this episode to make these points
Yeah.
because it's about more than just beating up the bad guy.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like that person that said, "Would you just shut up and just hit them or whatever?" That person, like, I think it's important to indicate that this is why it's important that this is why it's important to have like black people behind the helm telling these stories because when black people understand instinctually, all of us, I think, do because we live in a white patriarchal society. That if we throw a punch, if we decide to attack, we're attacking not just that our opponent, we're attacking an entire system that's rigged against us. So when it comes to like the X-Men deciding to attack, to go on the offensive, they have to make all these strategic decisions around how and what way this is going to affect them in the future, and what is the further
Mhm.
implications around how people are going to view them as the X-Men. Are they going to be seen as threats? All of that's going to come into play. So when it comes to them trying to talk people down, they try their best to do that first because there's all these other implications that they have to deal with if they don't try that method first. And that's where Professor X comes from. Like, let's kind of be the model myth of what we should be as like the respectable X-Men, respectable mutants, and I think that that's where the ideological clash comes in for them. That's why they don't punch first. I think that's why. That's I think that's important to note too.
Like I wanted to add just like
Mhm.
I just thought it was so powerful when Scott came forward and was like, you know what, we're gonna do things a bit differently. Like
Right,
we're gonna do what we've been telling the humans to do all along and embrace the
right.
future. Like
Mhm.
Embrace it. Right,
and at first Rogue was like, wait a minute, we're not about to give up. And he's like, no, we're not giving up. We're just gonna try one more time to tell Bastion, like what the deal is because like one thing I think this show did brilliantly that a lot of people aren't really picking up on is that bigotry doesn't make sense. Like at
no,
the end of the day, like you can try to figure out what Bastion's plan was, but it didn't make sense because bigotry doesn't make sense because like at the end of the day, he could be perceived as a mutant. Like they thought he was a
Precisely.
mutant, and he has some internalized self-hatred, and maybe that's why he's acting out the way he is. But at the end of the day, like he was just kind of like stoking fears and hatred, but he didn't have a like plan that made sense. And the X-Men were trying to be like, like you may be invulnerable. Like we can try to like clearly punching you isn't working because you keep evolving and upgrading. Like he had 2 costume changes this episode, guys. He went from
that's word. He did.
Bastion went from looking like I don't even know how you would describe this. Tell me, guys, like what do you think of this look with the goatee and the like you know the hair like the robot?
He
did this look first, and then after that he decided to go upgrade even more to the Second Coming look he had from the comics. Like I don't know if you guys are familiar with that arc, but in the comic books he had this Dark Angel with wings kind of look when he came back in Second Coming. So that's what they did in this episode when he upgraded even more. So he's like, to me it's all very like Terminator. I feel like X-Men
that's what I was thinking,
this deep relationship with Terminator, because it's always like the same kind of like evil robots from the future are gonna kill you. We gotta time travel and solve this, you know what I'm saying? But I
mean, I think that's the question. I think that's always the question that the X-Men started to ask is like children of the atom, and what's the question around evolution? What does that look like? Have we already evolved because we have technology that actually is more human by the day? Like I think that's always the question with them as time has gone on. I think that I think that question has been asked many times over, and I think that they are a good kind of template to have that discussion because of the nature of like them being just being mutants and like being an evolutionary change. So I'm all for it. I love when they tell stories about like what happens in the future and how technology is ruined things, and I'm all for that. I think that the X-Men are supposed to be cautionary tales because they are. I mean, they really are. So
I mean, all superheroes are to a degree.
Agreed. I think that X-Men being like their whole crux being about now and the future, kind of reminds me of the whole saying like Marvel's supposed to be the world outside your window. So when it comes down to being a marginalized community, and we're Black, the future is a thought that comes up being a part of a marginalized community and POC. It's the fact that like you have to wonder, what is tomorrow going to look like if there's a world that hates us? So having that thought that looking over your shoulder thing with the X-Men and having them have to see, hey, is what we're fighting for going to get us to a better future? Sometimes I really wonder, is there ever enough commentary on what it's like being part of the X-Men and seeing that there's going to be a future where it gets worse? Like, I feel like that would be kind of haunting. Like that'd be very, very like depressing. Having to have that happen and everything.
I mean,
but I love seeing those type of things with X-Men.
Yeah, like to the show's credit, they showed the feeling that Cyclops in particular was going through of seeing the future come back and tell him it was his decisions were trash. Like he sent his son to the future hoping for like a better future, and then his son comes back fully grown and be like, "Nah, you done messed up. So try again."
I would be crying and throwing up. I would be crying and throwing up. Like I would be. I'd be having an existential crisis, like, dang, like, for real. And I got one more thing to say, going back to the whole Bastion thing. And Freddy, you can cut this out. You can like edit this out if you need to. When the whole question of like Bastion being a mutant was coming up, and they were like, trying to empathize with him and everything. In the back of my mind, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, so does that mean Bastion was a coon this whole time?
I mean, pretty much like he was the Candace Owens of or like the Clarence Thomas of the X-Men, I guess, in a sense.
See,
Like
I don't know. I can't. I see that. I think that's very valid. You see, that's very valid. However, I think that they did a good job of actually creating context for him to kind of show that
True.
there was no other being on planet that actually could empathize with his experience, and he could talk to and say like, this is what I'm going through and I need to release this, or I
I don't
need
know
some
if that's
help
true.
through
There
this.
are other mutants that have machine powers, aren't there? Like I don't know if they're in this series, but like Madison Jeffries is the first one I can think of. Um, who talks to me? Forge. Forge is a freaking
Well,
like
Forge, yeah, Forge.
talks
You
to
can't say
machines.
Forge, but
I
Um,
thought
like
they
in the
would have
same
had some
case,
scenes
like
together. I really thought they would have.
that would
yeah,
have been interesting.
right, it would have been,
Um,
yeah. Yeah,
but
but I don't know, because like I think that like his position around his mom trying to help him through stuff and trying to like have him like Professor X was trying to get him
Hmm.
and it didn't work out. Like I think that there was a lot of stuff that sort of kind of shows that like yeah, he was just like he really had a lot of like self-imposed anger, like self-imposed hatred. Like he really hated himself. It really seemed like he hated himself. That's kind of how I see it. So it's like in the vein of what you're saying about Stacey Dash or Candace Owens or I don't know, whoever you want to like insert in that. You know what I'm saying? Like Herman Cain and there's all these different cats. Like you could
Listen,
just like
I didn't
spit.
name all those cats. You put the
You
names
could do
on there.
that, man. I'm just saying you could do that. I'm just saying you can always do that. You could just do that. But that's what I'm saying. I think it's a level of like self-hatred, like the system that they're
Hmm.
in as mutants, all of them, including Bastion, the system that is opposing them as mutants, it kind of broke them all down. And
Yeah.
it put him in a position in which he hated himself. So he's like, we're just gonna kill all the mutants. Like I hate how y'all look because the y'all being ops to everything that's happening is making it hard on me. Like, so y'all all gotta go. So I
I
think that
think
he
the
had a
worst
hard
part of
time.
it, I think one of the worst aspects of it is that he didn't really want to kill the mutants. He wanted to subjugate them. He wanted to enslave them.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what we saw
Mm.
in Cable's future, and that's what like I think he's had a scene in this episode where he's like, "I'm not going to kill Cable. I just want to torture you. Like I want to torture you. I want to torture Magneto. Like like." It's kind of disturbing, like to the depths to which he sunk. Like he was like, like like I feel like the show never paused long enough to let us really sink in the fact like Bastion was messed up, and like
Yeah,
I
Hmm.
don't
yeah.
know. Did you guys clock this? Because I'm not sure if I clocked it because I was listening to another podcast where it's like um, Bastion's mother lied to him at some point, and the X Men were trying to they were trying to tell Bastion the truth. Like Xavier thought you were a mutant and wanted to recruit you, but like Bastion's mom, I think, was the one telling
Oh yeah, tell him that he's
Bastion
normal.
that
That he's
he's
normal.
normal and that Xavier
Oh
didn't
yeah,
want you. Like
that's really important. That's important.
I don't remember that being
That
mentioned. Like I remember them
I
saying it in
yeah.
the episode, but like in the previous episode when we saw Bastion's origin, did they show that?
I don't
They
think it
do. Well,
was.
she
I think they've
mentions
been
it
adding on to it. Like everything is so like
that
blink
you
and you
can
miss it.
watch it when you see it. When you see that whole story of him, of his background about him being in school and him like having issues. She says it in that episode. She's just like, "You're not. There's nothing wrong with you. You're normal," and that's very important. Very very important because that's one of those things that like interracial kids go through. Right? You make
Hmm.
that example, right? But interracial kids like never get a chance to talk about their experience around being black with their own families at times. They don't get a chance to talk to their direct parent and be like, this is what it's like to be black. I want to be in this position. I want to actually,
Hmm.
not be subjugated because I'm black, even in my own family. But because white people and that are in interracial families don't have the tools to talk about racism or don't have the tools to talk about what it's like to be in an interracial family, they say you're normal. We don't talk about it. It's fine. Like it's just a part of your life. Like don't worry about what they say. You don't even get a chance to like have your feelings validated because your parent is so concerned about how the larger society is going to view the two of you as targets, you and your child as targets. So his mom being in a position in which that she's already living in a society that is very, very cruel to mutants, what else is
Mm.
she going to say to her kid but say, you're normal, snap out of it, it's fine. Don't
And
draw any more attention to us.
and this
That's
is a
how I read
recurring
it.
theme. This is a recurring theme of the X-Men, like way back in
Yeah,
episode 1. Jubilee was like,
right.
I just want to be normal, you know, like,
Normal,
and
Mm-hmm.
right.
and this season, Roberto, like, I just want to be normal, guys. Like unfortunately, being a minority is not considered normal. Like, why is
Right.
that the case? Because bigotry doesn't make sense. You know, like we're all people. You know, like we should all be considered normal human beings, regardless of our skin color, sexual orientation, all that stuff, gender. But yet society keeps finding a way to oppress or make others feel less than. And Bastion is just feeding into all of that and trying to amp it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think honestly, I just think that Bastion didn't even need to feed it into it or hype it up because it existed already in the society that he was living in. And I think that
But
his mother and her inability to talk to him about his position and how it's unique, her inability to have that conversation with him, that's what led him, I think, to that place because his mom never talked to him about it.
but
I think that has a lot to do with
interestingly,
it.
part of his plan was to make all the humans more like him, to make them more robotic. And the X-Men were telling him, like, that's not your family. Like, they didn't choose to be robots. Like, you made them into this, and like you forced this hatred onto them, is what the X-Men were saying. Like, I think there's debate to be made about how much of it was like their choice, but um he definitely, along with Sinister, you know, stirred some stuff up, and like they didn't even remember that they were being turned into these Prime Sentinels. So uh it's
Hmm.
kind of interesting. Like I didn't know, I was kind of shocking how many Prime Sentinels there were around the world, you know? Like this
Hmm.
was but I do want to go back to Damon. You were talking about the Spider-Man cameo, and I have this image of all the cameos that were in this episode. So can we talk about that a bit more? Because this is an image from X-Men Update. So thank you guys for that. They assembled all the cameos here. We got Doctor Strange uh, performing surgery with his magic hands. Like that's interesting. We got Cloak and Dagger and Daredevil. We got I think this is Darkstar. We've got Red, Omega Red, and I think that's Crimson Dynamo over there. You guys know who that is on the left?
Let me
That's
see.
Crimson
Yeah, it is
Dynamo.
Crimson
Wow,
Dynamo. Yeah.
I think so. Like he's like a
that's not the
Russian
suit I know about.
character.
Who he
Yeah,
had.
he's had a few different looks, but I think that might be him. And then like
Cool.
we saw Spider-Man and Mary Jane. I was surprised that Spider-Man was not in costume for this. Like we got the Peter Parker and Mary Jane. We got Morph turning into Mr. Fantastic. Again,
I'm
we got,
surprised they put Flash Thompson next to him too. I was not expecting that.
is that
Me
Flash? I
neither.
guess it looks like Flash. I was trying to figure out who that was because they.
I was
You're
thinking
right. It
maybe
does.
Eddie Brock. I was thinking it might be Eddie Brock, but you might be right. It might be Flash. Because, well, no, it might be Eddie Brock actually, because Flash is blonde.
Yeah, but
Trying
he
to think back
has
to
a
how
Uh,
Letterman
Flash
jacket
looked
on.
in the '90s show. Uh,
I think it's
who
Eddie.
knows? Could
Well,
be.
no, you're right. Actually, you're actually right. That is Flash Thompson. Because Eddie Brock is like a redhead in the '90s show. I think he's like a redhead or
Yeah,
something.
and
Yeah, kind of
he
like a
looks like
flat
Yeah,
top.
older compared to Peter.
he's got a flat top. Yeah, he looks older. Right, right. Hmm.
And then we had Black Panther, guys, and we had the Avengers doing nothing, sitting in the Situation Room with the president. Like I was asking in the last
Oh,
episode, where are the Avengers? And clearly they were not helpful in this show.
I was gonna talk to y'all about Captain America in this episode because actually I have some gripes about it. I wanted to ask you guys about what you thought about
Go
Captain
for it.
America's characterization because I actually think that Captain America would not be as open to start nuclear war with the X-Men. I don't think that he would. I actually think that he would
Yeah,
be a little bit on the fence about that. I think he's more humanist than we like to believe. I think that, obviously it's easy to see him as America's top cop and he's easy to fit into that position. However, when we think about like we were just talking about the Civil War, Freddie, we were just talking about Mark Millar's Civil War a couple
Yeah,
of
off
years ago. Well,
podcast. Yeah.
20 years ago. Yeah, that off podcast 20 years ago. And that characterization of Steve Rogers is that he's anti-government. He's he's anti like uniformity government. And I think even if you read Twilight, he's still on that. He's still like
he's
anti-government.
anti-fascist. He's anti-fascist. And when fascism pops up in the government, he's going to stand against it.
He's against it, right? And I think that the decision to cause nuclear war, I don't know if he would be so down for that. But again, the world was at stake.
I mean, he did show regret on his face. Like, I don't know if he had any lines, but like we saw his face without the mask.
So his face without the mask. Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that unfortunately, every time the Avengers appear in an X-Men story, they're not going to be at their best.
That's a good point.
Like it's just kind of a symptom of storytelling. Like, they're not the focus of an X-Men story. They're not the center of it. And unfortunately, they're more likely to be more in line with the antagonist. I think that, and I think it does speak to the writing of this season, because they very much put Xavier and Magneto at the center of the conflict. Like, it was their decisions, it was their powers that had the impact to change the outcome or save the entire world. Like, no one else could have done it. Like, no one else could have had the power or had the reach to kind of be there in that moment to make these impactful decisions. Even Iron Man, like, his suit was probably like powered off. Like, I'm like, dude, why are you in the suit when there's no power? Like, you
right, when there's nothing going on. Right.
And but interestingly, we do see the Black Panther show up, and he does have a line, and he does remark how, like, y'all should not send these nukes against Asteroid M, because history will not look fondly on this. Well, they might forgive you, but like, but you better hope that we're not teaching our children religion, or else they'll be real mad about what you did. Because he said something along those lines. And it was interesting because later on, they reveal that this version of the Black Panther is not T'Challa, it's T'Chaka. So I have lots of opinions about that, but do you guys
isn't there a continuity error?
Kind of, because we do see T'Challa in
Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four. He had a whole episode, and he also had appearances in X-Men cameo.
X-Men 92. Yeah.
And that was T'Challa.
And he was voiced by Keith David too.
So there have been rumors online that this might be part of an agenda to kind of like focus less on T'Challa because of the passing of Chadwick Boseman in the MCU and broader properties. Like, I don't know if that's true or not, but it does kind of feel that way as a fan of Black Panther. Like, I'm kind of wondering like why they made that choice. Like, Bo DeMeo did speak on it, but he said, I can't really speak too much on it. That's all he really said.
Ooh, that's very telling.
Really?
Something about that. I have thoughts. I got some thoughts.
That's interesting. Yeah. Wow.
So, I mean, on the one hand, I was excited to see Black Panther and the Dora Milaje, and even if it is T'Chaka, I mean, it's the 90s, T'Challa could still be around. But, I don't know. Like, it was a little disappointing to hear them say T'Chaka instead of T'Challa. Like, they didn't even have to say his name. They could just left it.
Just the Black Panther.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Wow. I think that's fascinating that like they're like seemingly protective of the character to T'Challa because of Chadwick Boseman's passing. That's so interesting.
I mean, like, I got it. Like, I respected Wakanda Forever. Like, I think that was a beautiful movie. I think I think the actors were so close to Chadwick Boseman that they had to honor him as best they could and like honor his memory. But at the same time, fans do love T'Challa, and T'Challa is an integral part of the Marvel universe. So it's like, what are we gonna do here? Can we at least have him in alternate universes at least?
Yeah, it's also making me wonder because remember, it was last year. A Black Panther video game was announced. We don't have any information on it, but like, it's making me wonder.
We do.
Do we?
Yeah, I think that's also T'Chaka.
Well, there's like the main like Black Panther one, and there's the one that's Captain America and Black Panther, where that does focus.
And that's his grandfather. That's not even T'Chaka. That's not even T'Chaka. That's the grandfather. That's T'Chaka's dad. Yeah, that's his grandfather.
Okay. And the
or
main one,
something like
we haven't
that.
gotten too much information, I don't think, with it. We just got like the logo or and like the studio. We don't know too much, but like it's really making me wonder what's that going to be about. I'm curious. I'm curious.
Yeah. So I looked it up. It's the Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra game stars Azuri as the King of
Right.
Wakanda and the Black Panther.
Mm.
Right. It's his
Um,
grandfather.
I mean, granted, the Black Panther is a legacy title. It's. I mean, not
It's like the
necessarily. Okay,
Phantom.
let's we gotta figure this out because the Black Panther is not a title you inherit. It's a title you win through combat, ritual combat, right? Like you have to
Hmm.
Not
fight
really.
to be the
No.
Black Panther.
No,
Like
not really. I
in
mean,
some
like
stories,
you could
like
be the
that's what
Black
happened. That's
Panther.
how Killmonger became Black Panther.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
like it depends on the story. Like in the movies, and in a lot of the comics, they are like having these fights. But from what I've read of the comics, it seems like T'Challa has unfair advantage because he's been schooled
Right.
to
Schooled by
imply like
right.
to be this excellent
Like
fighter,
trained to be
excellent
that.
smart guy. Like he's been
Right.
trained to win these fights from a young age. So like he has unfair advantage against everyone else in Wakanda. I mean, it is what it is.
Actually, it's kind of funny when you think about it because it's then like if you lose this fight, it's your fault. Like you had all the proper training and prep time to do it, but if you lose, they caught you slipping. You're
Hmm.
supposed to lose.
But then I gotta point out that now in more recent comics, T'Challa is no longer the king of Wakanda, and yet he's still dressing up like the Black Panther. Um, I mean, people think he's an imposter, but he quickly proves that he's him. And it's like, I mean, Shuri is
See, they,
still in. She's still in the
that
government, so she's fine with it. But like,
that comes down to that comes down to family like heirlooms and passing down family tradition and generational
Mhm.
passage of time. I mean, like that's if he's still the Black Panther, even though he's like not like the ruler of Wakanda, like I think that there's some like continuity errors around that. If that's the case. There's some
yeah,
ways in which they're telling that story that has issues because like
yeah,
if it, he shouldn't be the Black Panther, then he should just be T'Challa running around doing things. If that's the
yeah. There's a
case, because it's weird.
yeah, there's a lot of inconsistency with it, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are getting a little off topic, so I'll let it slide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was at the very least, I was glad we got to see Black Panther make a good point in this episode, regardless of who it was.
Yeah, word. Exactly. No, I hear that.
Who are the other cameos that we saw here?
Matt Murdock. Matt
Yeah,
Murdock and
Matt
Reed
Murdock,
Richards and
Daredevil. Speaking of Daredevil, Disney just had their upfronts. They announced that the estimated date to bring out Daredevil Born Again is March 2025. Are y'all hyped?
yeah. I'm hyped
Yeah.
for it. I mean,
I'm
like,
hyped.
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if, they're going to actually tell a dark story because I thought that they would do that with Echo, and Echo wasn't all that dark. They were like, oh, it's so dark. It's the darkest thing they've done so far. Like, that's like, even Feige was like, it's so dark. And then, like, I watched it. I was like, this is not dark. There's nothing. This
Well,
is like quite,
I
quite,
think it
quite
was.
bright.
I don't know. I think it was darker than most of the MCU content we've gotten, and like it
Mm,
did for me give me Netflix Marvel vibes. I mean,
yeah.
just the whole way she was struggling with being an assassin. We're gonna get off topic again, but who cares? Um,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, it's debatable. I mean,
I just
would you
think
say it
like
was more dark or less or equal to Moon Knight?
I say that it was probably just about as dark as Moon Knight. I think the Netflix shows have kind of set the bar for what's dark. When Kingpin crushes that dude's head in the car, kills that dude, like decapitates the dude with a car door.
Ooh,
You
I forgot about
can't like
that.
if it,
I
unless
mean,
yeah
but
exactly
Echo
unless Disney is
Echo
doing that.
suffocates a man to death. Like you see her first kill, you hear his heartbeat. She has these she has
Mm,
these like she relies on her hearing because she can't no
right.
not she's deaf so she can't hear, but she
Mm,
can feel his heartbeat as she's killing him. And like
mm,
um I don't know. I mean,
it's
we didn't
not
have a
as like
Kingpin scene. You're right, but
not as brutal. It's not as like just it could be. That's what I mean. Like if here's the thing. Like, I'm of the camp that I think that Daredevil works when even if he's brutal or not brutal. I think Daredevil works really well as a swashbuckling hero. I love Daredevil as a swashbuckler. I love that he's like. I love when he's like smiling, cracking jokes, and like is like doing different silly things. I like him fighting Stilt Man. I like that type of Daredevil. I'm cool with that. So if they tell that story with Daredevil, I'm open to it. Either way, I'm excited because I love Daredevil, and I actually really love Charlie Cox's rendition of Daredevil. I think he's one of those people that was perfectly casted. He was just perfectly casted as Daredevil, and
Yeah,
I'm just curious to see what they're going to do next.
yeah. To your point, I think Daredevil is a character who can kind of operate in
Be
both the
both.
light and the
Yeah, he
dark,
can do both.
and
Yeah.
Agreed.
from what we saw in She-Hulk, it was definitely a lighter side of Daredevil
Mm-hmm.
with Frogman and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Marvel, I think they know fans of the Netflix series want a certain consistency of storytelling that we had. So we'll see if they can bring it. Um, but at the very least, we know he's alive in the X-Men cartoon universe. So
I
that's
love that.
interesting.
I'd love to see him, man. It was like there's a lot of potential there. I think that they could. I honestly think that they could really bring back all of these animated shows. I think we're in a space now that we're about to hit an animated renaissance. I think with like Superman coming out and all these different animated shows, X-Men has did way better than anyone expected. I think we are about to be on the cusp of something new with a bunch of new animated stuff coming out on streaming
I mean, I'm here
services.
for it. I've
Easy,
always been a
a
huge
quick
fan of
turnaround. Yeah,
superhero
it's a quick
animation.
turnaround and all that stuff. Yeah, I think they're going to do it. I think it's going to happen.
I'd love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about these characters. Alpha Flight was there, and Psylocke and
Yeah,
Cypher. Uh, they didn't do much,
what's
but they were
my?
there.
Yeah, I forgot the homie's name. I forget his name. The little short
Puck.
cat that runs in that.
Puck.
Yeah, Puck. Yeah, Puck. Word. Yeah, because they showed Strong Guy already. I remember they showed him for a quick second. Or he was on. Strong Guy was on.
X Factor and Genosha.
Yeah, Genosha. He was in. Yeah. He was on Genosha. Was X Factor was there too?
Yeah.
Wasn't
Oh, he was on
this?
the Strong Guy's on the X Factor team.
Yeah, I know he's on
Uh,
on the X
with
Factor team. Yeah.
Forge's team,
But this is Alpha
and
Flight. Yeah, that's right. My bad. This is Alpha Flight. I got it mixed up. My bad.
that's all good.
Hey, sorry to
Again,
interrupt you guys real quick. My laptop is overheating, so I think I
oh
might have to
man,
hop off right now.
oh
Like it's like
man.
really
Well,
Oh
hot.
snap.
all right, we'll let you go.
Oh,
But thanks so much for coming here. Any last thoughts you want to share before you hop off?
Um, I gotta say this final was fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to the next season. And the cliffhanger that it was left off on, it just felt like you were reading like comic. Love that. Love the
yeah,
way that it
for
was just
real.
like to be continued. It set up everything nicely. And
Right.
then I'm just hella excited for it. I really am. And socials plug. I got Instagram, I got Twitter, and also YouTube. That's where I primarily post this stuff. It's Super Saturdays podcast. But thanks for having me on here, Freddie. It was also nice meeting
Thanks
you,
for coming
Travelle.
back.
It's very nice meeting you.
Of course,
Yes,
of
yes.
course.
We'll be in touch. We're gonna be in touch though, for sure.
Yes, like
All right, I got
we're
you.
looking forward to your upcoming podcasts, and thanks again for coming on. We'll see you in the future.
All
See you
right,
soon, bro.
signing up. See you guys.
Take care, bro.
Later, bro.
All right.
All right. Um, I I do want to also call out that last picture where we saw Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Polaris. When they were in like this metaphorical boat in Magneto's mind of people who
Oh,
were
I
like
love
from
that.
his life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
love
was
that.
amazing. Like they were in shadow, but they were there. People have been wondering if we're going to see Scarlet Witch.
Yeah,
There she
I
is in
love that.
shadow.
I actually thought that was actually really, really great. And is that Polaris?
Yep, Polaris on the right.
Oh wow. Wow.
Hmm.
There's all of his kids. All of his kids showed up. I love that.
Somebody
I
did
was
say
really
like,
well
is it
done.
weird that Rogue is probably like the same age as his kids? But it is what it is.
Pretty much, yeah. That's I mean, he's got that going on, man. That's yeah, but that it's, I would say it's weird, but it's so common
Mm-hmm.
that people that had these age gaps like happen. And this also is another reason why it could be argued that he actually, like, in a lot of ways, was he manipulated her when she was emotionally vulnerable. Like, he's older than her, but also she's very traumatized from her experience and not being able to touch anyone. He was able to like create an opening for that because he could like create a force field around his body to touch her. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different takes that I've seen that argue that he might have just like actually just sort of emotionally manipulated her, or just like sort of like took advantage of her being emotionally vulnerable at a space in her life at a time in which she's looking for family and community. He was an older dude with kids her age. He like kind of took that into his avail, So I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a touchy subject. I mean, I do want to say at the very least we have to assume that they were both consenting adults because this is not like the movies where Rogue was a teenager, like or X-Men Evolution. Like
Yeah,
I want to call it out because like in other iterations we do not want to see Magneto and Rogue together, but in this version, Rogue is an adult. I think there is still an age difference. There is still questions of how much authority did Magneto have over her? Like what's his power? What's his influence? Like you said, was that something that caused uh, un- unfair imbalance in their relationship? Um,
right.
I don't know. It's questionable, but that's one of the great things about the X-Men. They are messy. It's not they're
They
not
are.
perfect. Um, and things aren't ideal. Like I particularly loved how easily Magneto went between talking about his relationship with Rogue and his relationship with Xavier, like in one breath, in one sentence. Like they would
Hmm.
be talking about like basically how bisexual um, Magneto is without even saying it. So it was
Yeah,
very like interesting the way they wrote that to me.
right. I think, yeah, I agree with that. I think that there was a lot of illusion. Like they alluded to a lot of them being queer, both of them being able to like have range around their sexuality, and I think that's really important. I think why not?
Agreed.
Like I think it's like really important. I think that like it also makes a lot of sense. I mean, these two like intellectual men that have seen things that like they're in a position in which they're always chastised and berated for their lived-in experience. I think it makes a lot of sense for them to actually have an open enough mind to even have at least have an experience with one another, like or have, think about things in that way, or to think that it's not weird to have a relationship with someone along those lines, or be open to more than just like one type of experience, like when it comes to their gender expression. I think that like that is I think that says a lot about their characters. And I think that being written that way, I think that it's so it's so easy to like kind of write those characters that way because it's already there. It's
Yeah,
he's already,
absolutely.
Bo DeMeo is just kind of writing what's already there.
Right. Like that's the best thing about this show. Like as great as the writing has been with like great lines and great character work, so much of it is true to the comics and like just ripped from the pages and like just interpreted in
Hmm.
a new way. So
Right. That's
like
it.
they have been very lovingly just trying to draw from what's from the comics rather than trying to completely reinterpret it like in a way that rings false. So like I'm glad they didn't do that. Um let's see. I kind of
I
feel like
agree.
we should probably wrap up our thoughts on this episode. Let's talk about a few things we didn't talk about. Any thoughts about
Mhm.
Roberto's big moment turning into Sunspot,
Oh,
saying his name?
yeah, that's actually a really good point. I was telling my wife about that, about how like, that was what I was looking for, is that this big grandiose like, oh, look, I'm here. But then my wife was like, that's probably by design. It's probably just to show that he's finally like mastered his powers and now he can do a flashy reveal. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense because
Yeah,
when
I
he
mean,
first,
I was
like when he
expecting it. Like I
first,
was, it was a
oh
whole
yeah.
arc. Like from his first appearance when he was saying, "I'm one of the good ones." I'm not like those other mutants. I knew he was going to
Hmm.
have a whole character arc where he finally came around and embraced his mutant powers. But I'm glad. I
Hmm.
think it looked
Hmm.
cool. I mean,
I thought it looked
um,
cool as hell.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm a
Mhm.
little bit reluctant to praise the plot line with Roberto because just like there's ongoing debate about was his character whitewashed. I mean, we could
Mhm.
get into it or we could save it for another day, but um,
Mhm.
it is something that I think it's plain that this show avoided specific parts of Roberto's history that were in the comics. Like they did not get
Mhm.
into any of the stuff that related to his race, and they added stuff that didn't have to do with his race. So like in a sense that
Mhm.
could be considered whitewashing. And then you've got
Yeah.
I mean I don't want to get into it, but it's just something that continues to be a question hanging over this show. Um, let's talk about Jubilee though, because I was glad
Mhm.
she had her little moment. She said, "Back off, Sleazoid" or something. Like
Agreed.
she sucked Bastion in the
Like
face
gave
with
him
her
work.
fireworks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she gave him work. I was actually really
yeah.
proud of that too, that she gave him work because
Hmm.
like it's always assumed that she can't really step at all and be efficient in a fight when it comes to the when it comes to the X-Men, but she came through and held her own, and I was actually really proud of that. I thought that was a great move, to be
And
honest.
speaking of people who
Hmm.
got their lick back, like Rogue, she got her lick back. She was like, his name was Gambit. Remember it? Like
Oh
she when she
yeah,
came in, I was like, kick
that was
his
dope.
butt. Like I was like,
Yeah,
yes,
that was really
Rogue.
dope. I was very
And
pleased with that. That actually was really dope.
so speaking of
I thought
that,
that was fantastic. Hmm.
yeah, speaking of that, I gotta shout out Polly, another guest of DMV Comic Book Nerds. She sent in a few thoughts. She said that she loved that scene as well.
Yeah.
Um, um, she loves Aurora, but that scene with Rogue was hardcore. The way she was beating Bastion, she was a force of nature, and like this whole show
Oh,
was
I
simply
love that.
magic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And then when it comes to her favorite episode of the season, she said her favorite episode was episode 5 because for an animated
Mm.
show to hit you that hard was extremely unexpected. Like it was emotional and very mature, and like I agree that it was a huge turning point for the
Hmm.
show.
Hmm.
It still has stakes that are continuing and to reverberate. But I want to ask you,
Yeah.
Travelle, did you have a favorite episode this season?
It's really hard to say, but I probably would have to go with 5 as well. I
Mm-hmm.
know it's a cliche answer, but I just think that what they accomplished in 5, this episode 5 was like actually really, really remarkable. And I think that Marvel hasn't really had any sort of outing that has been that level of like just magnificence since like I said, since Endgame, and I think that 5 really turned it up. I mean, you would think that like how could you really top each episode that came before it, but then here you go at 5, and we're just at episode 5, and they stay at that level. It stays at that quality until we get to the end of the season. So I would be remiss if I didn't say 5, just
I mean,
simply
5
because
was
5
a huge
actually
game changer.
turned, and it like turned the volume up and kept it up, kept the
Yeah.
quality up, kept everything. Storytelling was still high level. Like it was still like really really fantastic. It was like it didn't like let down. It's like it really stuck the landing. So I think that
And
5 really is it.
I wonder if that's going to be the unanimous thought of like the consensus after the show is done, like or at least
Mhm.
as we are in the wait for season 2. Um, like I will definitely give I'll definitely give episode 5 its props, but I also want to shout out episode 1 because like I feel like
Mhm.
this show came out the gate being strong,
Yeah.
like being
Mhm.
like the loving way that it represented all the characters, like
Right.
everyone's powers were like there, like the music was there, like it was banging, like it was. I mean, I have fond memories of watching that first episode, and it was a double episode, so that episode was great too. But like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. They went big every episode, and it's like they're all great in their own way. So
Exactly. They're all great. I like I said, like every single episode, I think that it really really stuck the landing, and it was like really really perfect. I
it's
I actually am like really impressed with it.
like it is interesting that nobody died in this season finale. Like
Yeah,
people were speculating that there might be another death, but thankfully there wasn't. But
I was concerned about that. I was telling my wife that it was like, watching this, I was watching it and actually afraid for characters to think that characters may die because episode 5 really set the standard around that, like no character is safe and a
yeah.
character could die. Another one of your favorites could die because they killed
Mm-hmm.
everyone's favorite. Like Gambit is like pretty much everybody's favorite for the most part. Everyone loves Gambit,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not your favorite. Even if it's not your favorite, you still love Gambit.
And this show
So for them
made
to
you
do
love
that,
made people who didn't love Gambit before, they brought them in just before they killed them
mhm,
off. So it's like, yeah, it
right?
was
And those that did love him loved him even more. Now we love him
mm-hmm,
even more.
exactly.
It's
And
insane what they did.
um um to that point though, there was that post credit scene at the end with Apocalypse on
Oh,
Genosha.
right.
Let's talk about that
Yeah.
because like he picked up the
Uh-huh.
card that Gambit had, like the Queen card, I guess Queen of Hearts, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think
Yeah.
like we were all waiting to see when is Apocalypse coming because it kept showing him in the opening um credits, the opening scene. So we're like, where is Apocalypse? So like he finally shows up, and we finally get that post credit scene. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Are you
Was.
ready?
I I actually think that he's gonna bring him back. I think he's gonna bring him back like Archangel
Yeah,
style. I think he
Horseman of
is, and
Death. Yeah,
yeah, Horseman of Death style. And I think that didn't that happen in the comics? I think that happened in the
yes, it
comics that
did.
Gambit came back that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's not too far fetched. Yeah.
I think that's what they're going for. But then
Hmm.
again, I will say that sometimes when you think the show is going to go one way, it then zigzags and goes another direction. Because we all thought we were going to get Onslaught this episode. Well, not all of us, but
Yeah.
like a lot of us were speculating and we got that intense Xavier Magneto fight, and
Yeah,
they
that's
were
what I
in
thought
like the
too.
brain, so like it could have gone that way, but it didn't. And I'm
Right.
kind of glad it didn't because like on that, it would have like escalated the battle even further. And we needed kind of like a break. We need them to solve something or win something, have a little bit of a win before things got
For
even
real.
more out of control.
I mean, it kind of
So
did get out of control again though, because like they
it
ended
did,
up,
it did. But at
caught
least they
up. They
saved
ended up
the
caught
world
up.
before they got caught up in the time travel. So
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, yeah, I just kind of like I wish that they had an opportunity to like take a breather. They just got finished
absolutely,
like being like on
that's
on
what
the
I
on a
always say.
spaceship and
Like
damn,
some of my favorite X-Men moments are when they have downtime and when they're just
downtime,
chilling. Like they
chill.
finally get
Yeah,
to,
they
yeah.
chill.
So like, but unfortunately, the X-Men almost never get downtime. So
No,
it sucks for them.
it really
But
does
they're
suck, man.
so what happened even? Like they got okay. So okay, Bishop comes in at the last minute, being
Love it.
like he's like, okay, look, yeah, I know I missed everything, but I'm here. And then he even calls Forge by his other name. He calls him
His government
Daniel,
name, Daniel.
which
Yeah, he called him by his government.
like he's never been called that in the comic books, but I think Chris Claremont confirmed that he wanted to call Forge Daniel Lone Eagle. So that's like
Wow.
his presumed real name. And so yeah, for Bishop is like, yeah, I don't you don't know me now, but I'm your friend from the future. And the
Right.
X-Men, we gotta go find the X-Men or whatever.
I loved it.
Yeah. And not
I
only
thought it was
that,
great.
Forge was looking at a wall with lots of pictures on it of other. Oh my God, did you see who was on that wall?
Oh, right. I saw that there was like I saw Colossus. I think I might have saw
Colossus.
Marrow. I saw. Oh,
I
okay, let's
don't
see.
see
Oh,
Marrow,
Bobby
but here's a
Drake.
picture.
Bobby Drake.
Iceman,
Oh,
Havoc,
Havoc.
Exodus.
Oh,
Uh,
snap.
Kitty Pryde is there. I've been wondering all season, is
Oh,
Kitty
wait.
Pryde
Kitty
going to come
Pryde's
to the
there?
show?
No
Look,
way.
right
Where is
there in
she?
her blue costume, right there next to Emma.
Oh, snap. That is Kitty Pryde.
So
Holy
that's
Moses.
very
And Magic is
interesting.
there. Magic
Magic
is
and
there.
Dust. I would love to see Dust get some
Wow.
shine. Um,
Yeah, they did show
very,
Kitty
very
Pryde
interesting.
finally.
Here's Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. It says that they're both off
Hmm.
world, which is curious.
Yeah, indeed it is.
Um, so yeah, that was very
Wow.
interesting.
Well, I just like it's
Great
bugged out that
tease.
they showed Kitty Pryde finally, like she exists in that universe.
Yeah, like
And that's the
that's a
first
big
time we
deal.
see her. That is a big
Uh-huh.
deal. I don't think like That's the first time we see her in the X90s universe. Like we've never
Hmm.
seen her. Even in the original show, they don't show her.
Right, and
So
we've been
that's
waiting
such a
all
big
season,
deal.
wondering like, are we going to get a
Yeah.
morph cameo? Is she going to show up in
Wow.
person? But we finally get a little character design photo of her, so that
That's
was great.
crazy. They'll probably bring her
Um,
into the next season. I see that
I
happening.
hope so. Yeah, I like we've
Yeah.
already seen Stryker, and she's a big part of the stories where Stryker is involved, so I could see that
Hmm.
happening. I mean, honestly, I do think Onslaught could still be on the table, like
Yeah, me too.
um, but right
There's a
now
lot of potential.
we saw the X-Men get split up.
Hmm.
How did this happen? I can't remember how this happened. Like, how did they get sent through time? Like they were fighting
Um,
Bastion. The asteroid blew up. Like
I think
Magneto.
it was someone actually, I think, pulled them through time. That's how I kind of invested. I saw it like because Magneto wakes up, he stops everything, and that kind of is what like saves him from death.
Can I
But in the
say
same
at that
case, like I think, yeah,
in that one scene where all the X-Men were trying to like stop the asteroid from falling to Earth, you saw Rogue, um, Storm, and Jean like teaming
hmm
up, and I'm like, they look like the Powerpuff Girls, and I love it. Like like they were like
yeah,
just flying up together, like saving the day. And once again, the city is saved thanks to
yeah,
the
yeah.
Powerpuff Girls. But so there was that, and then what else? So they get split up. We see that um some of them have gone back in time, and they see like we got Magneto, Professor X. I think Beast is there. Um, who else is there? Not Storm. Storm, Wolverine,
yeah,
and Morph are
yeah,
missing. Um,
yeah, they are missing, and Storm, Wolverine, and Morph are missing. We didn't see them in any time zone. We didn't know.
it
We
was,
didn't see them
but
either way. Wow.
some of them are in the past, and they encounter En Sabanur, Apocalypse in his
Yeah.
olden days. Like that was
Hmm.
interesting. Like when he had
Hmm.
hair, he had a lot of hair. He had hair
Yeah, we
like
had a
you.
lot of hair. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. You did.
and then
That's funny.
we see Jean and Cyclops. They're in the future,
Yeah,
and
in the
they
future
actually
with their son.
encounter young
Yeah,
Cable and Mother
I
Ascani,
love
like
that.
who I think is like presumed to be Rachel. So like this is very interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of this, like there are some old
Whoa.
comic books that we can look into over the hiatus to see, if we can get any
Wow.
details. But yeah, I think that's some intriguing stuff for sure.
Wow, that is
Like,
intriguing.
like a way
Wow,
to
that might
end the
be
season.
Rachel. It might be Rachel. Wow, that
Hmm.
might be Rachel. Wow, that's really, really fascinating. Yeah, and I love seeing Cable with his like little red hair. He's like he has like a little
Yeah.
red head. I thought he
Hmm.
was so cute.
Like a
It's
little bit of
great.
white, and then like he had a little hat
Yeah,
on, and
he's
this
so
is straight from
cute.
the comics. Like I think there was this
Mhm.
period in the comics where Cyclops and Jean went by the name Slim and Red, and they were like in the future raising
Oh,
Cable.
right,
Um,
right.
so so this definitely is ripped from the pages of the comics, and we'll see how deep they go into that next
Mm,
season. But yeah, great show. Can't
mm.
praise
I
enough.
loved it.
Like
Fantastic.
do you have any complaints about this episode or this season that you want to throw out
Not,
before it's too late?
I can't say that I do. Only thing that I was thinking about that was actually kind of weird is how they all were able to breathe in space. Because like Jubilee fell out the air
Yeah,
the she fell out the space shuttle. She was in
yeah.
space and Sunspot got her and she was like
Right.
breathing in space. I was like, all right, well,
Yeah. I
hey.
have to assume that they were in low orbit, like they were still in some atmosphere, maybe. I don't know. But
Mhm.
yeah, that was questionable.
Yeah, I was
Also,
like,
I one complaint I have, I hate every time Mr. Sinister said he called Cable his writhing thing. I'm like, God, why do you have to say it like that? Like, what are you even talking about? Like my
because he's a creep,
writhing
and I
thing of
think that
chance.
I
Yeah.
like that. That's why I actually liked it because he was just such a creep about it. He's such a creep.
No,
He's
it
such
was
a
well
creep.
written, but it was definitely
Yeah,
creepy. It made my skin crawl. I'm
yeah,
like, ugh. He said it
yeah.
like three times throughout the season.
He did.
Um, and then speaking of Sinister, we just have to mention real quick how Phoenix Jean showed up and jobbed him. She was like, I'm gonna just rip this mutant DNA out
Oh,
of you and make you
yes,
look
that
like
was
your old self.
great.
That was great,
Oh,
and like,
that was
and
fantastic.
this is how the comic books love to deal with Nazis. Like, I feel like the Red Skull also like has a similar thing where like he was revealed to be like this weak old man under the mask, you know. Um,
That's interesting.
so
Wow, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point you make there.
so
Yeah.
like that,
Huh.
I actually was about to crack up. Like, I think I was laughing when Sinister got turned into an old man because Sinister always has these like comedic moments, even though he's like this horrifying villain. And I'm
Yeah,
just like,
yeah, yeah. He
it's a
does.
weird balance. It's like
The really,
he's
yeah.
always like
I
a
was
goofball, but like he's
and
also
he's
very
sassy.
scary.
He's like very
Yeah, he's
sassy. He's
yeah,
like very, very messy. He's a messy, messy bitch. I notice he's quite funny. He's like
he
he's
is.
quite. I think he's a great character. He's a great character. So I'm always curious to see how they handle him. I heard that they kind of overdid the use of him in the most recent comics. Like they had this whole clone saga with him and all this other stuff. But I think in the most recent,
Yeah,
no,
they did.
yeah, not the most recent arc, but the arc before the most recent arc.
Yes,
There was like this
Sins of
big
Sinister,
Sins of Sinister.
and
Yeah.
on top of that, there are multiple Sinisters now. So like, and they all have
Oh,
like
that's
major
canon
plot
now.
lines. Yeah, so
Oh,
it's
huh.
I mean, it's interesting, but also
Wow.
it's a little bit oversaturation. But I think I want to talk about Jean real quick. Like, we didn't talk too much about her turning into the Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Right, this word. She turned into the Phoenix. I totally forgot. I totally this is
because
what I'm
like
saying. I mean, so many things happened.
so much happened. Like as soon as she turned to the
Hmm
Phoenix, like then she was gone and she was back to normal again.
I
Like
was like, yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, okay,
yeah.
you have
I
power
mean,
over it like that now? Yeah.
but at least we did get to like to hear the classic like the music, the
Yeah,
shimmering new age
yeah,
music, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
the
yeah,
bird like or whatever
yeah,
sound is
yeah.
like a screech, and then
It's
like yeah, it
the
was that was kind of cool. But then I was like confused like why she was like fully fire, but she was also like making the water into like a phoenix shape. Like she's fire and water. Is that
oh yeah,
necessary? But
yeah. It was what was kind of weird. I noticed
but
that
she can
too,
do
actually.
whatever
Huh?
she wants. Like I mean, at the end of the
She
day,
can.
I don't think we're meant to like scrutinize it. We're just meant to like be amazed by all the crazy stuff going on. So
Like I said, I think it makes sense, but I mean, I think that was an easy way to clean up all of the mess of what was happening. I think it was smart, but I think it also kind of. I wish that we would have saw more of that, like how because she talks
they'll
about
th-
how like it just came to her, like it didn't really let go of her soul, so it came to her when it
yeah.
noticed that they were in like a really really rough situation. Well, I think it's because the Earth was actually in distress. I
No, but
think there's a
also
chance.
last
Mhm.
episode, Cable. It seemed like he was killing her. Like we didn't like
All right,
last episode, Cable was killing her, and she was saying her
that's probably
goodbyes to
yeah.
Scott. And then this episode, we don't really see her until she comes back as the Phoenix. So maybe
Hmm
she resurrected and then went back to normal real quick, or maybe we'll see more of the Phoenix in season two. I'm sure we will.
I mean, oh, that'd be cool. I'm sure that Rick will find it very cool too.
Yeah. Um, any other things we missed? Storm. I mean, Love Storm. She didn't do a whole lot this episode, but she did enough. She held it down. Like we
Yeah,
called
she
out some of her
always.
best moments.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we talked about
Should Wolverine be
everybody.
this out of commission for this long, you think?
Well, I mean, I think he had some great moments in the first two parts of Tolerance's Extinction. So, like, I think,
I mean,
after
shouldn't he
getting
be
his
healed by
adamantium
now?
ripped up, I
Shouldn't he be
mean,
healed? I mean,
I'm fully expecting Bone Claws next season.
me too. Me too.
Um,
Hmm
so I'm sure he'll be healed by next season's first episode,
hmm
maybe. Um, yeah, I think we hit everybody. If we didn't, fans, listeners, please tell us in the comments what we missed and what you liked, and we want to hear from you. We want feedback. Thank you so much for listening, for being here. Um, we didn't even have time to talk about comic books, but
Oh yeah,
we'll
we
do
didn't
that
shoot
next
them.
week. We'll do it
Yeah, I'm
next
with
week.
that. We just like talk about comics next week. I'm with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I want to thank you again, Travelle, for
yeah,
joining us today.
of course,
Um,
man.
any final thoughts? Any want to plug your social media one more time?
Yeah, of course. Again, my social media is Big Boy Nerd. I'm actually really active on Threads these days, but Threads and Instagram, YouTube, Twitter somewhat. I have a Tumblr too. But I'm actually going to be starting a podcast soon. So that should be the first episode should be up by the end of the month. And then from there, I'm just going to keep it rocking. As I said, I'm going to be exploring the different components of Afrofuturism. And if you visit my threads, you'll be able to see what that is composed of. I actually wrote a piece about it really quick, just explaining what the topics I'm going to be going through and how I'll be handling it. So if you have any insight or interest, anyone's interested in checking it out, you can go to my threads, check it out. I'm Big Boy Nerd on threads. And then whenever it does drop, I'm sure I'll be able to put it up on other platforms and people will see it.
Love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. Again, you can find me at DMVCBN across most platforms. This has been an unbelievable ride. I didn't really expect it to be how it turned out to be, and I'm just so thankful for everything, for all the guests who've been a part of this, all the listeners, and just for the show itself. Like, it's been a total gift as an X-Men fan and comic book nerd to just kind of have a great show to talk about and to enjoy week after week. So we're looking forward to many more seasons and maybe even some spinoffs. Who knows? But I
think we'll get them. I think there's a potential. There's just too much potential for us not to get any more spinoffs. Like they show all these other characters, like even show the Fantastic Four. They even show Reed Richards really quick, and there was a '90s show at the Fantastic Four. There's just a lot of space to tell story right now, and I think that they could do it if they really wanted to. I mean, like I said, the Superman show is out right now. They have the live action movie coming out, but they also have the Superman show that's coming out at the end of the month, no less.
And there's a new Batman Cape Crusader coming out soon.
A new Batman show coming.
There's so much. So stay tuned, everybody. Get it? TOONED. Stay tuned, everyone, because
we're just getting there. Yeah, just starting it.
And I'm sure that here on DMVCBN we'll be talking about more of that to come. So thanks again, everybody. Good night. Excelsior.
Excelsior. Good night.
Bye, everyone. And our music is done by Trap Remix Guy.